morning. This is Dr. Anatole. It's good morning to me because the forest here is beautiful. It's only 7:15 in the morning. I like walking in cool places, and we're in the middle of August. And I want to talk about what is a spiritual path. It's an interesting question in many ways, including how many incredible misconceptions and miss there is around this affair. To me, the spiritual path, your spiritual path, starts when you recognize your spiritual pain, and when you recognize that you are in a spiritual pain, that brings to the surface spiritual desire, spiritual search, and that's what spiritual path is kind of about. Several things come to mind here. The number of people who think they're on a spiritual journey, but they don't really have spiritual pain and therefore a spiritual desire, is a lot. There are many reasons for it. One, probably the most important, is that very few people come on the path, especially formal path, paths taught by different groups, cults, religions. There is always a mixture of what I call life coaching, basically advice about how to live your life. And there's nothing wrong with teaching young people, helping young people to live their life better. I think it's a very good thing to do. But what does that have to do with spirituality? That's just a separate issue. That's exactly where I'm going right now. The thing is, spiritual pain and therefore spiritual desire is about recognizing that you became imprisoned by your personality, by your culture, by your language, and you want to break out of this prison and embrace your soul for what it is. It's a non-dual, non-judgmental, unconditional consciousness within you. Or you can call it, unconditional love, you can call it unconditional wisdom, you can call it being connected to God. All of these things are words. Which brings us to another issue, which unfortunately affects this talk as well. And that is that you really cannot talk about spirituality and spiritual path at all. Because on the spiritual path, within the spiritual path, language breaks down. You cannot talk about realities which are beyond language in language. Well, you can try to use poetry, which have been done many times. You can write songs, you can sing chanting, you can sing kirtan and chant. These are all ways which probably don't work to break through that dual, non-dual barrier. The barrier of thought forms. And I've talked about thought forms many times. This is a big shtick for me. Recognizing that pretty much all our life as humans we're surrounded by clouds of thoughts, thoughts that seem to be alive but actually they're quite dead. And we have our culture, our language, our parents, ourselves. All of these generate thought forms within us and around us. And these thought forms, they define reality around us. So if you speak English and you were born in an American environment, the way you view reality will be colored by your culture. In my case, I was born not in the United States, so my native language colors and my so-called native culture colors my perception of reality. And being bilingual, bicultural, actually I'm more like tri or quattro, four-cultural person, this colors my perception as well. It colors. Color that we're talking about, coming from cultural language and your own ego, is what imprisons you on the path, or rather imprisons your soul, and the path seeks to release you from that conditioning. There are many different techniques and traditions that achieve, they don't achieve, they strive to achieve this de-imprisonment, this release into the freedom. Unfortunately, if you actually look at people who are trying to be on the path, this interference from their desire to live their life well, which I call life coaching, it forms their personality, which means that they are creating a different kind of prison cell to their soul in the form of the tradition they attach themselves to. And there is some usefulness to that. So if before you were colored by your culture, by your language, you have an opportunity by joining a group, a tradition, a religion, you have an opportunity to have a different culture, the culture of that religion, of that group, influence you, and then you will have at least two viewpoints, and you can contrast them against each other. And when you do that, you have a chance, a grace from the Lord, to realize that both views are wrong. The new ideology and the old ideology, they are both ideologies, and they both are just fancy names for the prison cells that you have built around your soul. And yes, you can say that everybody is in this. Yeah, absolutely. But just because everybody is in jail doesn't mean they should stay in it. So the spiritual path, the way I see it, is a journey out of that conditioning. The journey that necessarily recognizes at certain point that it's not possible to break through and away from this conditioning. So you surrender, let go. All of these are wrong words, I don't like them. You relax around your life, and you learn how to ignore these conditionings and focus yourself on what's important, which is your soul. And you recognize that you were born in a certain place, you live in a certain situation for, I want to say, a reason. No, you just live where you are, and that's the ground on which you stand. So let's take a look again at what a typical, well, in my case, Westerner, in my case in terms of where I live, not in terms of who I am, would do when they're young and they feel an interest in so-called spirituality. Most likely it will be an interest in depth psychology, means they will be very interested in human psychology, in how their own mind works and how can they improve their life in relation to whatever situations they're in, their relatives, their parents, their sister, brother, wife, husband, co-workers, blah blah blah. And that's natural. So what you see is people getting into all kind of psychological stuff, like Jung, my favorite, James Hillman, psychology adjacent to spirituality. And the question is there a crossover from this kind of interest in psychology and life coaching, which is essentially, for our purposes, the same thing, into spirituality? In other words, is there a bridge from dual to non-dual? And pretty much all scriptures say there is none. This bridge is grace of God, and since this bridge is a grace of God, two things happen to this. Number one, there's nothing for you to do. You can just relax and wait for grace to descend onto you, unless, of course, you will grow mold behind your ears. And for that purpose, some exercise, walking in the forest, breathing fresh air, as if I don't live in a village where the air is fresh everywhere. So you do something to keep yourself agile and active, but ultimately it's all about the grace of God. And how do you get to this? Well, scriptures say that you should do good deeds, you should help others, and then you will build up what I call, or some Buddhists call, a virtue deposit, a virtue account, or an account in the bank of virtue. So you make these deposits to your virtue account by doing virtuous deeds, and yes, it helps you have a look at not so savory parts of your personality, and that's helpful for your psychology, because being a naughty person in relation to others is not good for your life. But what does that have to do with your spirituality? Absolutely nothing. So what's my advice? I don't have any advice, certainly not on this medium. But yes, there is a way out of it. If you're interested in this subject matter, please do subscribe to my channel. I am going to try to release videos on a regular basis. Hit that bell so that you'll be reminded. Have a good one. Bye.